we start, Karin is offering simultaneous translation into German.
As far as possible.
As far as possible.
Yeah. If there's somebody who really hardly understands English, then listen to me, I'll try to give a simultaneous translation.
I'm sorry, that's great.
Is there anybody who needs? Entschuldigung, ja klar. Gibt es jemanden, der kaum Englisch versteht, dann würde ich simultan Flüster übersetzen. Aber wirklich, wenn jemand sich echt schwer tut, dann würde ich mich in eine Ecke setzen mit der Person und zuflüstern. Wenn nicht, dann viel Spaß.
But I would say to make it easier for all of us, come just a bit closer.
Ich glaube, wenn wir keine simultane Übersetzung haben, dass trotzdem, wenn es so Schlagwörter gibt oder wenn es so komplexe Wörter gibt, die auf Englisch offensichtlich was Wichtiges meinen, dass man sagen kann, please translation, and that we just translate that word. I think that might be nice. Yeah? Not all the time, but...
Yeah,
yeah?
that's a good idea.
Okay. Thank you for coming. We're here to have a podium discussion. I'm very happy to try this out. I have to say this is my first podium discussion and the first time we've had it at a Contact Festival. And first of all, I would like to thank Ditort for coming and doing this with me. I've thanked you already a lot, but I can't thank you enough.
Thank you.
And I think part of why I want to mention this right now, Ditort, is because you, in my point of view, you not only run a hotel, but you make things possible. And I think this is part of why I want to have this talk and why I feel it's great that you're also involved in this talk. And I'm not really sure what you're trying to make possible, but I feel like there is a sensibility about bringing things here to this place in Ispartal that have, to me, a great openness to it. And I think that makes it possible for us here to dance and to do the practice of contact here. So, thank you. We have two amazing people here that we would like to ask some questions. Nita, Dr. Nita Little.
Whoa!
Nita, you're a dance artist, you're a choreographer, you're a teacher, and you're a pioneer in the field of many things, amongst one of them contact improvisation. And I feel honored to have you here, and I feel honored to maybe pick your brain a little bit and get some insights in some of the more language-related aspects of contact improvisation.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for this nice introduction. I can assure you I don't know what I'm doing here, so we will probably together find out what it's going to lead to. What we want to do tonight is we want to try to find out why it is so important that more people do contact improvisation. Is that what maybe could be one of the topics?
That in itself is controversial.
Okay. I will introduce Christian and then we go into the discussion. Christian Felber is, I think, amongst the Austrians and the Spanish ones, quite well known. He's one of the co-founders of ATTAC here in Austria, one of the founders of the Gemeinwohlökonomie movement. This is, I have to This is the economy for the common good. He has written several books, of which the one about the economy of the common good I think is the bestseller. It has been published it has been translated into 6 languages and will be published in English next year. He also got the Get Abstract International Book Award for, was it for this one? No, it was for the latest one.
The latest money book.
The money book, yeah, okay. So, and besides his career as a political activist and author and I would say entrepreneur as well, he's passionate, okay, improvisation dancer. And yeah, he will let us know, he will share some of his ideas with us, and I'm quite curious to see how this discussion is going to run.
So I'm going to start with the first question to you, Anita. What do you enjoy the most about dancing contact improvisation?
Okay, we've got a problem. I actually, most sets me into a hierarchy, and I'm really, maybe what I enjoy about contact improvisation is that it allows me a structure by which I ask questions about questions I'm asked. About which, and questions I'm asking. It allows me a structure and a lens through which I can understand what I care about. And so one of the things I care about is not setting things into hierarchies, most. And I really care a lot about thinking of contrast as interesting, but what's interesting is the relationship that exists between things. So, and I mentioned contrast because hierarchical structures set up this better than and less, yeah, and so.
I took your workshop, your pre-festival workshop in Vienna, and one of the things that you talked about was politics of attention. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Right. Okay. I'm interested, and so all of that is to say, what I just said was that contact improvisation is political, and it allows me to understand our relationships, and relationships have to do with power, and politics has to do with power. And I'm interested in power relationships of goodwill, and Christian was asking me earlier what I think goodwill means, and I think goodwill means that I'm as interested in you thriving as I am in myself thriving, that I'm interested in what gets produced because of us, because of what happens between us. And that I'm not looking at me, I'm looking at our relationship. And that relationship, when it's of goodwill, then I thrive. A politics of attention means that what I pay attention to is the relationship, which takes a you and a me. I'm paying attention there rather than, for instance, paying attention to the objects you, the object me. If I do that, then I am interested in what you're doing vis-a-vis and in contrast to what I'm doing. But what contact does is it has this fascination with what it is that we emotion do relationally. And that's just amazing. Did I answer?
Sure.
Kind of.
Actually, I'm going to get a little bit more specific. What do you see the role of the body in the politics of attention?
So a politics of attention for me is to say, I used to be interested in the mind. And so in the early days of contact improvisation, or the middle days of contact improvisation, I started teaching workshops called The Mind in Motion. And those would be an outgrowth of contact improvisation. And then I started to realize that there was a problem with those words, that in fact I really believe that this is a mind, and that this form doesn't begin and end with the skin, that in fact it's a spatial temporal form, and that the only term that really seemed to make sense to me was to talk about attention, what it was doing, because that requires physicality and it requires mentality. It requires me to hone the skill of being a mind-body.
I had a conversation with you yesterday, Nita, and you called it the extended brain of mind. You talked about body-mind being the extended brain of mind.
I don't recognize those words exactly, but I do talk about the extension of mind. I do talk about the extension of a body-mind as a spatial extension. I don't, as I just said, I don't begin and end with my skin. When I touch Christian, I am touching through him, and when I touch in attendance to what it is he's attending to, or on a physical level, I can feel something about what he knows. I can feel the ground, I can feel what he's sitting on, I can feel any movement that he happens to make. And I give him access to me. I give him access to where I live. And so I'm an extending brain, and that's kind of proprioception, but I think we're only beginning to explore what that actually can mean. And the only way to actually explore what it means is to really study what attention does, and study the webs of attention. We're really interested in the fascial system these days, and that fascia, through proprioception, starts becoming spatial.
Is this how you see it as well?
See what?
Contact improvisation. Is this the picture of contact improvisation? Is it yours as well?
It's one picture that I understand, and I agree. Although being one of many facets, there might be many pictures of contact improvisation. Of course, my original picture was there are 100 pictures.
Which ones would you like to add? Not all the 99 missing ones, but maybe is there something that you would like to add as what contact improvisation is for you?
Yes. Coming also back to your original question, when I started 15 years ago or something, or was it 20 years ago? It was, for me, it was species adequate behavior. Species in German.
No.
It was in the first moment species adequate behavior, artgerechtes Verhalten for humans, and it was for me used to brain fuck things, and was educated in a mechanist, patriarchal, capitalist culture, and was finally a non-verbal way to relate to each other, to create a community, a practice moving, to get into connection with my body, with my feelings, with my needs, with my intuitions, with my spontaneity and creativity. So finally I found what I was missing in all other parts of my life, especially in the scientific life, in the political life, in the economic life. So everything what was lacking and missing there, I found in fullness and in plentiness, and it was kind of a rescue oasis for me. This was my first picture of CI.
Okay, I think just we haven't said this yet. In case you have any question in between, please feel free to ask these questions. It's not meant that we sit here and interrogate these two people. So whenever you think you need something to know, please just ask.
I'm going to go back to Nita. You were one of the core group of dancers in 1972 who started this thing, or not a thing, but actually something, this investigation.
An event, yes.
An event of contact improvisation. And I've heard you talk about it, that it was a political action back then. Could you talk about that?
Yeah, I probably should also say that it was an art action, an artistic action. In 1972, the U.S. was involved in the Vietnam War. And there was a tremendous amount of objection to the Vietnam War and to the way that it was being managed. And at that time, I should say, the U.S. had really interesting documentation of the war that was coming to the public. So we could publicly object with a really strong idea of what was going on. The napalm bombings and all of that. We were seeing the result of it on TV. So one of the really profound things that was happening at that time was the fact that we could see what was going on. That no longer exists, by the way. You should know. We have video, but we do not have visuals of what's going on in the wars the U.S. manages. But at that time we did, and it was pretty horrific and pretty horrible. And there was a lot of objection going on. And one of the things that happened, the objection was to the fact that we were involved in something that we had no choice about. And that there was a hierarchical structure going on in our arts, in our political system, in all of these systems that was leaving us relatively helpless. There was a lot of art action about that, really questions, artistic questioning about the structures of power and ways that power was being managed, appreciated, active in our art choices, our artistic choices. And you could look at power as being, the hierarchical structure of power as being even present in such a thing as how we held our bodies, up being good, down being bad, ballet dancers being off, female ballet dancers being on point shoes. Because the lighter and the higher and the more away from the earth we were. And in this same time, there was a lot going on with, and I'm probably saying far too much, but just to give you context, At the same time, there was a lot going on of investigation of Eastern cultural and spiritual practices. So there was a lot going on with art. In art, John Cage exploring chance operations, a lot of creative actions that were considering silence, that were considering alternative ways of structuring relationships and our relationship to events and experience. And it was in this time that Steve started being interested in exploring. Steve Paxton started being interested in exploring how it is that men, working with men, how bodies responded with the kind of immediacy and intelligence that allowed them to crash mid-air, fall to the floor, rebound, come back up and do it again. His background was in Aikido and Tai Chi, as well as contemporary dance. He was a Cunningham dancer. He was also did gymnastics in his early life.
Immediacy as a counterposition to hierarchy?
No, where that took us to was an investigation of circuitous space. So all of a sudden, in contact improvisation, when we started to really get into what that articulation did, was we started to have respect for gravity, have respect for weight, have respect for falling, have respect for the multiple dimensions of space. So no longer were we really dancing with our heads on top, right? Our heads could go anywhere. Any direction was good. And ultimately what it ended up was gender wasn't, it started to question gender and all the other various considerations of difference and structure and what's possible.
As I understand it, in terms of dance history, it was also the first time that women were lifting men. Is that correct?
I believe so. I mean, I would like to say yes, and I haven't done a really in-depth inquiry into that, but it wouldn't surprise me. It was the first time I really was aware of women lifting men.
And not the other way around.
Right, it was far more familiar for men to be lifting women, and when men lifted women, there was something about that. Not only was the woman an object, but the man was lifting the woman. The woman wasn't accelerating up, and they weren't meeting mid-air and then she came down. In contact, there was an ethos of not manipulating one another. There's this very strong ethos of not manipulating.
After 40 years of contact improvisation, would you say it is still a mixture of political and arts, of politics and arts, or is it
I think
already,
so.
is it already more into politics or more into arts?
I think it has many cultures, and all of those cultures do different things. There's a healing culture. There's a culture that explores
Performing.
Performing. There's it's influenced the mainstream dance very, very strongly. Modern dance, contemporary dance is not the same as it used to be anymore, and a strong influence on this country. Because contact was interested in not the objects of, here's another thing, not the objects, not dance as positions or as steps, but dance as relationship and action. And when you change your orientation, you get a whole different idea of power structures. Everything changes.
Do you see the political part of in CI as strong as Nika does? Or?
In order to recognize the political part or dimension of contact improvisation, I would need as a condition for it, or as a floor for it, a conversation on what is contact exactly, what is the intention of those who are dancing contact, which are the goals of it, which are the values of this practice, and then I could draw conclusions if this has a political content or dimension.
So what is contact?
A definition for contact?
Yeah.
I don't have it.
Or what is the goal of it?
As I made a previous talk about that, I found...
Christian, can you speak up?
Sure, of course, sorry. As I made a previous talk on some aspects of this discussion in Freiburg, I just found out for myself which are the goals when I'm dancing contact, and I found more than 10. And I already said one, the species adequate behavior, and maybe it's not only finally a non-verbal body language, magic, mystery, relationship, connection, but it's very simply becoming who I am and who we are together. And this is really one deep meaning of life, to become who you are as a person and to become who we are as a community and a species. This is one very central meaning of life. So one purpose why I'm dancing context is to get to know the meaning of life. And of course, this is one. You want to hear the other 9? Yeah, like health, like joy, like play, like therapy. For me, it was an depression.
Antidepressive?
An antidepressive, for instance. All for everybody who is sitting too many hours a day and looking too many hours a day into laptops or books or whatever, or just talking in this over-verbalized world. It's a curative by itself. Of course, it's also play and wilderness and many more things. What was the question?
Find your goals.
There's a question.
I would like to know, where did you start, Christian, where did you start dance contact, and what was the scene like back 15 years ago or 20 years ago when you started?
I started dancing contact within an dance education in Vienna, which was at that time new dance, and it was 4 teachers that combined very different styles and techniques from body-mind centering, contemporary techniques, and including, of course, contact improvisation. And that's where I got to know it. And before I had known a lot of technical styles, like modern and jazz styles, and I wasn't too happy with them. There was some pleasure and some happiness, but also fear and stress and pressure and judgment and all those things. And contact finally was like a freeing of all those negative sides. Simply, I did not experience any negative side of it. Maybe that's, and I still don't.
Has it changed a lot since? or is it still the
The-
same?
the
Context, yeah, the practice.
Yes. I got to know it much more as a skill-based practice then, but this, of course, I just got to know what I got to know, and today I see it. I see it more as a lifestyle already, and a full attitude of authenticity and play and personal development, and it's broad. And skills might be used, but they are not that important anymore. And everybody is in everybody is invited to add new skills and new styles and new elements.
I have a question to both of you. As dancers, especially at a festival, we tend to get very happy. I don't know about you. There's happy. Yeah. And sometimes I hear from people who are more politically engaged that people who work with the body are politically lazy. And I wonder if you agree with that. Are we as dancers politically active enough?
You start.
No, we are not.
I missed it.
The question.
No, she said you start. That he should start answering this question.
Then I start happy to say. Now I didn't get what you said. What did she say? Can you repeat?
She might have
And I know certainly if she does this means she wants an answer.
Sure, why not? Shall I start?
Please.
Yes. So I would enlarge the question first. Come on. Yeah, political change and transformation can occur on different levels or layers. And for me, it's, I would not say, if you are doing something specifically which is transforming mankind and culture and the planet and the universe, this is not effective. I would not say that. I would say you're working on a specific layer, on a specific level, and others are working on other layers and other levels. You can work on personal development, and this is changing the world because you're part of the world. You can create alternative and ethical companies or banks or stock markets, and you change the world through these companies. You can practice alternative economic patterns and build alternative economic structures, like prosumers, for instance, or community-supported agriculture, for instance, or money-free barter, for instance, and you change the world with it. You can do what my favorite choice and contributing to the great transformation, not the first one, but the second one.
Sorry, what is it?
There's a very, very famous book, which title is The Great Transformation, from Karl Polanyi. He's a Hungarian-based economist, and he wrote about the disembedding of the world economy from its local contexts and turning into global capitalism with a single ethics, with the capitalist ethics, although not admitting this ethics, although hiding its ethics and considering the worst. This is the worst ideology is that is saying I'm not an ideology, I'm objective. and I'm a natural law.
Yeah, genau.
She who is able to disguise herself, or that ideology, who is able to disguise herself as a natural law, or as a usual state of the art, is the most powerful ideology, the hidden ideology.
What is disguise?
Verkleiden.
Verkleiden.
To hide.
To hide.
Yes, and Karl Polanyi wrote the great transformation that is embedding from the economy into the globalized capitalist system. And the next, this was the first great transformation. And the second one that I'm talking about is the re-embedding, the religion, literally, which means to rebind the economy in the ecological context, in the societal context, in the ethical context, in the democratic context, yes, in all its contexts, in order that this economy and the increase and proliferation of money and capital is not any longer an end in itself and not the highest goal of the exercise. And
Go.
let me come to the point, because otherwise your question would have been in vain. And you can contribute on different levels. I would contribute on the level of the legal regulation of the economy, of national states and international law. And you can work on the consciousness level and just meditate and or just contribute with your personal lifestyle. So there are many layers. And now what's the true answer? It's a very valuable contribution to work on this layer. So you could say it's enough. But you also could say that you at least should be aware of that other layers that also exist and think about how you could strengthen each other and how you could strengthen those other persons that work on other layers and maybe even cooperate with them and create synergies. And a last remark, you could try to avoid contradictions to the other levels. And I just give one contradiction: to organize a contact jam in India for Europeans. I think it's a contradiction.
I do too. I totally agree.
And you only can recognize the contradictions if you look at all layers. If you only make perfect your contribution on your level, maybe you don't even get aware of many different kinds of contradictions.
So, as I understand, you divide the different approaches to changing the world in different layers, is how you described it right now. And as I understand, you see contact improvisation as part of the consciousness transformative element.
Mm-hmm.
And as I understand what you're talking about, that there's other more, I would say, direct means of regulating, of creating a market, of creating banks. How could the practice, the physical practice of contact improvisation bridge to this other approach? What can we, as a contact community, as practitioners, and I ask this both of you, bridge that these layers are not so isolated, or how can we learn from each other?
I would like to build up a spectrum of possibilities, of options, and maybe when I arrive here, you take over.
I can answer the first one, actually, but I think we're here, so why don't you go, and then when it gets here, I might do a little...
What was the question?
How we can bridge, so I kind of put these layers next to each other, not kind of this way, but this way. How can we bridge the layer or the practice of just working with our consciousness to the more practical means, and how can we communicate or integrate these practices into more of a practical doing of creating a bank, of creating new businesses, of creating healthier economical structures?
Thanks. First, just continuing our practice and deepening our practice and honoring our practice and being a point of attraction for the whole society. Because if you're really becoming happy in our jams, then more and more people will join, because this is a natural law. if people practice something that really makes us happy, more and more people, and maybe one day the whole mankind will follow
We need a very big
if this does not happen, maybe we are not only happy when we meet. And I would say if we are, I become happy not only, but there are very strong moments of maybe happiness in this kind is also a consequence of the satisfaction of basic needs. So I would also start this analysis: which needs do we satisfy when we need, and the consequence of the satisfaction of which needs is our happiness that emerges in ourselves as individuals or as a collective when we meet for the jams. So continue this practice, go ahead, and maybe that's enough. Second, we could invite more and more people. We could try to be more open and more
Inclusive.
Inclusive, thank you, and transport our practice and the experiences that are connected to our practice into companies, for instance, like the business yoga movement, bringing yoga into the businesses. And I'm not only positive about that, but principally one could be positive about that. And we could do the same and bring it into banks and communities and substitute 2 hours of television a day by 2 hours of contact a day with our kids, for instance. Third, and this is maybe it has already been a point of controversy. If we try to stay at the same level where the strongest power of the present system is concentrated, which is the level of laws, at least in my analysis. Capitalism is so powerful because the state of law, regulation, international law is backing the capitalist ideology, the capitalist system, power relationships, and capitalist ethics. So if we want to go on that level, then we could verbalize and write down our treasure chest, unsere Schatzkiste, which could contain our values, our goals, and our skills. All those great, attractive, and well-working skills that are making the dance so beautiful and that are making us in the end so happy. From instant instinct, spontaneity, creativity, wilderness, all those. Touch, weight exchange. There are, I think this treasure chest is very, very full. That those who do not experience the grace of dancing contact can also access it. It would be an access for 1,000-fold more persons than only those who dance. And then one could ask the question, which are the principles and the values that make capitalist markets operate, and which, on the other hand, are the principles and the values that characterize a contact jam. And to understand this, I would like to share a picture that I had one day, I think it was at Freiburg, and because I'm writing since more than 20 years about the economy and capitalist markets, and I had made an ethical analysis of what is actually precisely happening in markets. How do persons behave, and how is this behavior so different from behavior in other parts of our lives? And very logical and consequently, when I observed the contact jam with more than 100 dancers, I thought, wow, this is so opposite of the behaviors, the patterns, the skills, and the values of markets that it might be interesting or it might be instructive for persons who have recognized that we should change our behavior in markets, that we could learn how, thanks to principles and values and skills, a contact chain works. And then this, and now we need a word for it. But I think a word that does not create resistance at once is the treasure chest. So it's maybe just a treasure chest that could be an instructive tool for persons or organizations who would like to change behavior in markets or just learn from other experiences in our society.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want a different question, or do you want to answer that question that I just asked?
I think I want to answer that question in a sense of giving another perspective, an alternative perspective. Like Christian, I think that contact holds tremendous value, social value, political value, personal value. My perspective is formed from having begun this investigation as an investigation that continues as an investigation. I'm still inquiring of this action that we do, of this meeting with you. And I don't have answers. I get answers all the time, but I continue having questions. All answers seem to produce more questions. Just as every time I dance, the practice is not one of knowing, but one of knowing something that's fixed, but of knowing how to ask and continuing to ask. My perspective is formed from being 3 people in a studio to now being, I don't even know how large our contact community is, but going from that to this is quite profound. And I'm very concerned about top-down ways of making change, when I have seen inside-out extraordinary change beyond anything conceivable and faster than I can possibly imagine. You must understand that what we're doing is to rethink some of the premises of people like Plato, people like Descartes, those who thought that the body has a mind. And we come along and we go, maybe the body is a mind. And what happens? How could that be so? What happens? And every time you act as a body that is a mind in your dancing relations, you're doing something profoundly different than what people have been doing for generations and generations. And when I was in Israel, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, I'm not sure how long it was, in the teachers' meeting at the festival, the Israeli Contact Festival, they asked the artists who had come, why, from outside of Israel, why did you come? When other artists have been embargoing, have been refusing to come, why have you people come? And my answer to that was because I'm really dedicated to the change that happens when people understand personhood differently. understand the practice of being people differently, when they think differently about relationships. And that happens through contact improvisation. In the course of getting a PhD, I've been able to read fabulous theorists in other areas, some of whom use the term relation, I got it wrong, sorry. Some of whom use the term not responsibility for each other, but responsibility, the ability to respond to one another. That ability to respond happens when you no longer think you are a mind inside a body. It happens when you start to consider that the mind is a body, is a mind, is a body, is a mind, is a body. Then you start having this become what's important, and you start to realize that the responsibility does not stop with being human. The responsibility also is about the non-human. And when we only attend to the human, we are limiting completely our ability to respond. When our economic system is only about the human, we're forgetting the rest of what makes us real, of what gives us life. We're forgetting the environments of being that we also are. As a mind-body, I am not simply this form. I happen to be where the environment I also am. I don't live in a world, I am a world. So that kind of consideration shifts, and that's why I went to Israel.
We have a question. Thank you.
It's rather like a personal comment. I think that you talked for a moment about you mentioned the Contact Festival in India, in Goa, and I think it's a great example where some friends just who are traveling to India every winter started doing something, and in the last 2 years at least, they invited 30 professional Indian dancers for free to the festival, which is the first professional meeting of Indian contemporary dancers in this country, fully financed only by the festival. And for them, it's an amazing experience, they say, a kind of support which comes actually from the outside, from people who are not Indian, but it's incredibly precious for them because contemporary dance in India is still not very valued. And as we have conversations every year and think about this gender issue, how can we make it a topic or bring it on the table that there is more respectful behavior towards women, and what can we contribute to that change in the country itself, and try to find answers for that, like for the festival itself, but also like as a multiplier towards Indian society. And we're doing garbage collection things on the beach and all these things, so I think it has a big impact, and that's also what the Indians feedback us. It has really a big impact on, at least on this local level in Goa, and then when they spread it out to Delhi, to Mumbai, to Bangalore, to Chennai, so they feel really supported. So it's, yeah, it was just in the beginning it was a couple of friends going to India, and they created events, and I think on that level it's really powerful, or some other people like Sabine or me, starting to create festivals or to spread it, so it happens in every dance, it happens in the local communities, and then now in the last years, festivals popped up in Japan, in Thailand, now in Bali, so it's spreading worldwide. And I just think it's good to just know about it.
But if this is the justification for ecological destruction, then you could consider it, if I understand it right, a cultural mission that is bringing new values to a country, and that this cultural mission is justifying ecological destruction. And
why do you think it's ecological destruction?
Because one flight, I was invited to go there, and I asked, but I would love to go, but one flight from Austria to India is consuming more natural resources from the planet than the planet gives to me in a year. So. And to put it the other way around, because yoga came from India to Europe, and nobody would have argued that without flying, we must bring Indian yoga teachers by aeroplane to Europe. Otherwise, this yoga culture will never spread in Europe.
Sorry, I didn't understand.
Oh, I just make the example.
He's talking the opposite of how the West has been influenced by Eastern cultural actions.
Yeah, but from this perspective, of course, you cannot expect so many Indians to have the financial ability to come to Europe to learn contact here, and then to come back as opposite of how yoga had the chance to be spread by European traveling in India and maybe bringing some this practice.
Now we start to look for a solution for the problem.
Yeah, I think that contact would not have existed but for Eastern influences. I mean, I think that has to be recognized too.
But did they come by aeroplane?
Yeah, actually, probably they did. Or, yes, they probably did.
Any other questions? We have about 5 to 7
But
more
another,
minutes.
that doesn't dismiss everything you're saying. It
You know,
doesn't devalue it.
yeah, we have a question right there.
Yes, Christian, you mentioned that you see in the content community there is another way of working, like the normal market are working, as I understood it right. And I wanted to know how you can see this or why you say that. What are the things you recognize that the content community is different than the normal market?
Well, there is a very long list of of examples of values, and there is a very long list of examples by which values, by which skills, by which behaviors, the ethics of contact, and I think this has been a very important moment of the discussion that you talked about the ethics of contact. This means that they exist.
There is an ethics, an ethos in contact. I think that's very, I think there's an ethos, there's a pathos, there's a...
But obviously unwritten, and just a life in the practice.
Mm-hmm.
But I think this is a very delicate point. If it exists in an unwritten manner, then we could all write it.
But I think this is
I
a
think
different.
this is
This is a different
This
discussion.
is
We're
a
gonna have
different
a different
discussion.
track.
Or will we have this
I
tomorrow for
think, you know,
breakfast?
what,
Just one example. In capitalist markets, we are educated to compete, actually in precise Latin, to counterpete, which means to look for solutions against each other. Because compete literally in Latin means to look for solutions or to look for something together. But this is not what is happening in capitalist marketplaces. What is happening is that companies, and company is also a great etymology because it means to break bread together. It's kumpane, a company, and the bread breakers have learned in capitalist markets to break each other's necks and to kill your competitor. It's in management manuals. You learn to kill your competitor, and in contact we do not learn to kill your companion, but we
Killed each other in my class.
Oh, come on.
we have more space for that, right?
you kill each other without
Softly, with
victims.
love.
It's a win-win killing.
May I ask a quick question? Did Richard just go to start the jam? Oh. But let's be sure and acknowledge when he does do that.
It's going to be here.
Oh, it's going to be in here? Oh, very cool. Okay.
And just a tiny example, which the other way around. Capitalist behaviors or patterns are, for instance, pushing and grabbing. And of course, this capitalist behavior of pushing and grabbing, I manipulate you, I push you, and I grab you, or I grab as much as I can, we are all endangered to practice these patterns also in contact improvisation. But it's violating the contact ethos, because we are not supposed to push and to grab and to
not
manipulate.
about supposed to. It's about what's the result. If I push and grab you, what's the result? What ends up happening? It's an inquiry of it and a noticing. Of course, along with inquiry, we have noticing. And we notice that what happens when I push and grab you is that I have devalued your potentials. You no longer have the same potentials. And when you have more potential, the more potential you have, if you have goodwill my way, I have more potential for moving, for options of action. So it's really, it's not about a set of supposed tos. I don't use, as you in my workshop know, supposed to is not one of my favorite words. Could, suppose,
Yes.
it's not.
But I've never attended a workshop where the teacher taught me to push and to grab and to manipulate.
So you
This is competition. Come to my workshop.
maybe you can win a free workshop then.
In between lines, you just said that it's not written, but I just wanted to take our attention to the fact that contact improvisation has a lot of written material compared to other dance forms, I think, or whatever we call, thanks to all our mothers and fathers has been accumulating all this documentation. And if you look at it, there's no teacher training, there's no certification, but without those writings, without those documentations, personal or academic, I don't know, these reflections, I don't think that we would be here today with this clear understanding of what contact is.
Right.
If you was, I was just a fan, I don't know what you think about it, but what do you think about this accumulated knowledge?
What do I personally?
Yeah. Because from the very
I think it's fabulous, and I think that it continues the investigation. It sets contact up as a set of investigations, not a set of answers, so much as a set of reflections, of further questions, propositions, and potentials. And I think I bet that in a lot of that writing, noticing would be one of the words that you find comes up a lot. I'd be interested in what the words are that get repeated often.
And there is a hierarchy, because Nancy Starsmith decides who is publishing and contact quarterly, who is not.
This is there's an issue. There's an interesting thing about that, isn't there?
I mean, Contact Quarterly is not the
You might
only.
notice that. I don't know
Contact
that.
Quarterly is not the only publication that writes about contact improvisation.
But in any
One of them.
teaching situation, there is a hierarchy. There's a teacher,
But anyway, yeah, I think that, but Nancy actually usually does have some guest editors, or she has, she often does have other people.
I would say
making
2 more
decisions.
questions and then we go down.
For me, it's important to say maybe there's a contact festival community, like here, and there are people who are doing contact improvisation, and they do it with very different reasons, and those are not, it's like, some people part of both, but the people who are doing contact improvisation, the group is much bigger, but lots of them are not thinking they're part of the community. So I think
I agree. It's not
we will
a
not
community action.
forget it here at the festival.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There's many more people out there practicing contact improvisation
yeah,
than just at the
with
festival.
different reasons.
For different
Yeah.
reasons.
I'd like to say that I think of contact as a silent revolution, and I think that it makes I do think that there's something embedded in contact improvisation that's incredibly valuable to the future of the planet.
Last question.
No, I want to bring attention to one thing I find very interesting. The logo of this school is interested to do this talking about economy and our ecosystem. Because that's perfectly what we are speaking about.
I totally disagree.
But looks like a balance.
The one is the goal, the other is the means. And you can't make a balance between goal and means. You have to put a hierarchy between the goal and the means. For me, maybe it's just symbols, but money is the means, and the goal is the common good, or the good life, or the Ubuntu, or the quality of life.
It's interesting.
And I totally disagree with him.
In my culture, I interpret it in another way.
And we can have a conversation because
Maybe you should solve this by
Just have it down.
actually Richard's starting the jam.
Yes, he's going to start it in a second. I would like to finish this great conversation just with a little story. Esther and I, we went to the doctor yesterday here in town, and he happens to be a holistic doctor. He's a regular generic doctor, Allgemeinmediziner, but he's also a holistic doctor. And we went inside, and he said, "Oh, you're these people from the dance festival." We were like, "Yes." And he's like, "We have noticed you."